first speaker of this panel is Gaia Tedone. She is a curator and researcher with an interest in the technologies of image formation. In 2019, she completed her PhD at the Center for the Study of the Networked Image in London, and she writes and teaches on the topics of digital culture and post-critical museology. And furthermore, she is an independent curator, as many of us, or you today, and she will lead us to the very junction of the human and machine interaction in her lecture, Human-Algorithmic Curation Between the Visible and the Invisible. Welcome, Gaia. I'm very excited.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you, Dominic, for the invitation. It's great to be here in presence. And so my job today, I think it's perhaps to bring to the table sort of a perspective on this human algorithmic curation that comes from my practice as a research curator, and perhaps also complicate a little bit what we mean by curator and curating. So just to begin with, my perspective is that of a culturalist who indeed does believe that creativity cannot be located in either humans or machine alone, but it's found in their interrelationship in between. So in this presentation, I want to frame human and algorithmic curation as a network practice that is both reflexive and playful and can engender new forms of cooperation and value co-creation between humans and technical agents. But to begin with, perhaps I would like to draw attention to the fact that within the context of the network culture, the understanding of the curatorial function is fairly elastic. As diverse professional fields and discourses coexist under the same semantic rubric. So from art curating to new media curating, content and data curation. So in other words, online, a new definition of curation is only ever one click away. And many agents partake in the process, prompting the question of who's the curator of the internet. Is it the user, the editor, or the algorithm? The genealogy of new media curating is helpful when tackling this question. At the beginning of the year 2000s, Anne-Marie Schleiner defined the online curator as a future filter feeder, highlighting the rupture between the traditional role of the curator and that of the online curator. Other concepts followed suit and placed at the center of the curatorial process the relationship between the human curator and the algorithm. Such concepts include, for instance, Joaja Krisa software curating, Magdalena Titzli-Carver post-human curating, myself and Annette Decker notion of network co-curation, and also, of course, more recently, the notion that the computer scientist has been invested with the role and function of the curator. Indeed, as proposed by Katrina Slice, Nicola Maliv, and myself, in light of recent developments in the field of machine learning and computer vision, the work of the computer scientist can be framed as having increasingly strategic implication in process of curation, occurring in and outside the computer lab. All these definitions paint a picture of human and algorithmic curation as a practice that exists at the intersection of different fields, and that involves multiple constituencies and amount to different degree of proximity and intimacy between the curator and the algorithm. My point of view is to look at this relationship from a relational and systemic perspective that places human curators and algorithms within a much wider constellation of agents, including users, cultural institutions, network images, ideas, software, that interact with each other as part of processes of network co-curation. In other words, my perspective places the relationality and interdependence between human curators and algorithm at the center of cultural and social technical systems. My theoretical and empirical research so far has focused on analyzing such relationship within the framework of hybrid artistic and curatorial projects, operating both in the context of the so-called art filter bubble and in the wild. And here with this term, I refer to the broader context of the web and social media platform. This project, and I will discuss some of them in a minute, have helped me to understand how algorithms, in fact, act as visibility gatekeepers, determining what users see, know, and consume on platforms. Following from here, that platforms actually curate different network of connectivity. And indeed, the value is generated through the interplay between a given platform infrastructure, its community of users, and data layers. Thus, within the context of computational culture, a computational culture dominated by the commercial logic of platforms, the question and the conundrum that needs posing is, to curate or be curated? So a number of hybrid artistic and curatorial experiments have explored this tension, such as, for instance, the project Cosmos Carl, an initiative launched in 2014 by artists Frédéric Pissuis and Simondor Thor Helgeson. Cosmos Carl consists of an online repository which hosts links to embedded projects occurring in external platforms such as Google Drive, Torrent, Pinterest, YouTube, Instagram, and eBay, among many others. By clicking on the links featured on Cosmos Carl website, visitors are redirected to artists' projects that are active on the internet elsewhere. The interventionist character of the project follows the legacy of 1960s cultural jamming practices and of early net art that subverted the system it wished to criticize from within. The project that Cosmos Carl promotes play out a key tension, that between online user automatic habit of accepting platforms' terms of service and the reflexive choice of breaching them to make their procedure more visible. The aim of Cosmos Carl is produce a creative rupture in the system of platform capitalism by coordinating different interventions in several platforms. What Cosmos Carl suggests is that the effect of such mode of intervention cannot be judged in isolation or within a short time frame, but can be valued in the long term and in concert with similar operation. In other words, their force lies in the ability to be part and form a network of relations based upon shared and differential values, intents, and agendas. Another interesting aspect of this particular project is that it brings to the fore the agential dimension of the technology underpinning each platform or social media sites. For instance, an intervention on Pinterest poses a diverse set of challenges and opportunities than one on Tumblr or Instagram in terms of interface, image display, audience experience, and algorithmic dynamics. In this sense, as a case study, this project reveals how human algorithmic curation is highly sensitive to context. Speaking of a completely different context, a different kind of operation into human algorithmic curation was the one made by the now deceased, unfortunately, Museum of Digital Art in Zurich, with its web crawler All101. Here we are returning with the idea of the web crawler that we saw earlier also with Tillman's presentation. So the Museum of Digital Art in Zurich was a small and flexible institution that unfortunately did not survive the pandemic, but was at the forefront with experimenting human and algorithmic curation. So the team of the museum decided to open its curatorial process to the participation of All101, a web crawler that searched the web in order to index and select potential artists to be exhibited. However, the parameter that we used to encode the algorithm and the specific kinds of action it executed were never made too clear. As it could be learned from the museum website, all 101 was instructed to look for artists whose data traces corresponded with those initially chosen by the curatorial team for the museum inaugural set of exhibition. Therefore, the working of the algorithm mirrored and executed decisions previously made by the curatorial team. Also, the scope and reach of the algorithm was to prevent the perpetuation of biases that could affect the selection process. Biases based, for instance, on an artist's previous participation to a particular biennial or an exhibition in an established gallery. The algorithm, in this sense, was presented as an agent that could offer visibility to those artists who were not already in the public eye. The fact that the algorithm created a scoring system that was not personal and did not differentiate between different information sources was presented as evidence of the algorithm democratic approach. However, in its attempt to overcome the curatorial biases associated with the activity of search, selection, and evaluation, AL 101 inevitably amplified other biases that are also built in on the internet itself and potentially also created new ones. It's aimed to critically reflect on the mechanism of inclusion and exclusion that the very process of curating articulates was not substantiated by an equally necessary awareness of the bias the algorithm itself generated and reproduced. So this example reveals how human algorithmic curation is not devoid of friction and biases coming from both the side of the human curator and the algorithm. The problem of algorithmic opacity and more generally an oversimplistic approach to the field of human and algorithmic curation can be detected also in more recent projects, such as the last edition of the Bucharest Biennial curated by an AI named Jarvis. So this kind of operation creates normally a lot of media buzz, regardless of the quality of the art they display. But in this sense, they capture the temperature of the field. So the future scenario they depict is one in which the curator is replaced by the algorithm, and the process of curating is understood in terms of computational tasks that can be easily performed by AI. This scenario is actually already happening, as we also see this morning, by means of AI tools such as Dream Studio. And a recent project by artist Marco Cadioli ironically mocks this trend of curating with AI. This project consists of a simulated exhibition that's been advertised and circulated on social media as if it was a veritable show with its own fake opening, avatar audience, and fake program of performances. This artistic project reflects on the paradoxical time that we are living, where the boundaries between imagination, simulation, and reality are increasingly blurred, as well as those between artistic and curatorial operation. What I would like to argue here is that curating is not purely a computable task, but crucially involves cognitive faculties, such as contextualizing, interpreting, reflecting, sensing out, imagining, criticizing, inserting humor. Also, the point of human algorithmic curation is not to absolve the human curator from the difficult task of operating cautious differentiation from within the aesthetic complexity and messiness of the network culture. Such differentiation involves attentiveness to the nuances between cultural appropriation and plagiarism, user creativity and savvy marketing strategies, web parody and defamation, all differentiation that rely upon the use of human cognitive faculties such as critical reflexivity and knowledge. The last example I would like to talk about is my own project of co-curating with the eBay algorithm, Cassini. This took place within the framework of the project Exchange, which was an initiative mobilized in 2017 by curators Maria Laura Ghidini and Rebecca Modrag. They used the online marketplace of eBay as a site of artistic production and cultural exchange, and as an artistic intervention into capitalism. The premise of the project was to treat the idea of the auction as an artwork, hence the category chosen, the images uploaded, the price, and the description. Everything was to be considered part of the artwork, and each auction would run for 7 days. All auction and interaction with buyers were documented in the project website and in a catalog published in the summer of 2017. Through this conceptual framework, the curators were aiming to place art in a context where it could solicit an exchange with a stranger, from where the title of the project developed. Interestingly, eBay yields a variety of different items when the words curating and curation are inputted into its database, mimicking the messiness of meanings associated to the term that can be found online. To me, the context of the project appeared overtly curated, since it involved the two main project curators, a number of guest curators, including myself, and the platform itself acting as an additional curatorial layer. When reflecting upon the actual visibility of the project and its penetration within the eBay platform, it became clear that the latter was executing a key operation of mediation between the project and its public by means of its search engine algorithm and best match system. Further to exploring eBay analytics, I soon discovered that the eBay search algorithm was enhanced in 2013 to improve the platform overall performance, selling standards, and customer satisfaction. Interestingly, eBay renamed its algorithm Cassini after a NASA space probe dedicated to a famous Italian-born astronomer of the 17th century, Giovanni Domenico Cassini. Cassini implementation was part of a rebranding strategy, which began around 2018, and that marked a new era in the platform history, the move from a seller-oriented marketplace to a customer-centered one. Essentially, Cassini ranks highly listings that are honest and clear, informative, categorized correctly, and supported with excellent customer service. By analyzing and understanding how Cassini was informing dynamics of visibility and invisibility on the platform, it became clear to me that the algorithm was a crucial curatorial agent on the platform. I hence decided to forge a strategic alliance with the algorithm by experimenting with a mode of human and algorithmic curation. I adopted the term strategic alliance from the language of business, where it's usually employed as a synonym for strategic partnership, an agreement for cooperation between two parties who decide to work together towards common objectives, capitalizing on each other's strengths while maintaining their independence. I employ to suggest that human-algorithmic curation is a network practice that could engender new forms of cooperation between humans and technical agents within an online environment where the boundaries between corporate work, cultural production, and social interaction are becoming increasingly blurred. My strategic alliance consisted in circulating and selling on the platform a joint curatorial consultancy service in partnership with the algorithm. The visuals accompanying the listing drew together the language of astronomy, search optimization, and online curation. The kind of operation the strategic alliance with Cassini produced can be first and foremost described as conceptual, in the sense of working with different planes of imagination, and critical, in the sense of soliciting a reflection about the algorithm's concealed role within the platform. The polysemy of the work Cassini on the web was instrumental for this purpose, since he enabled to put in relation different concepts, fields and practices, and regime of visibility. the human language of sign and symbol, and the computational code of numbers and data. The parameters and visual language of my strategic alliance with Cassini were defined through the process of interacting with the platform interface and database, from the choice of the listing category to its full descriptive text and images uploaded. The item specifics described a mode of human and algorithmic curation, which aimed at merging a quality associated usually with humans, reliability, with one generally attributed to machine, efficiency, through the common channel of creativity. Although available to all eBay users, the service was specifically addressed to artists or curators interested in exploring the currency of their name and their listing in the liminal space between a commercial platform and the art world. The curatorial consultancy service placed particular emphasis on two key success markers, visibility and criticality, which weigh the relevance of an artist or a work of art in both the art market and the institutional establishment. These success markers are usually hard to quantify and control, since they depend upon highly subjective and volatile criteria, such as fame, chance, test, and market fluctuation. It was artist Alessandro Sambini who purchased the consultancy. As a result of it, I conferred with the artist and guided him through the production of a brand new listing. Sambini auction ranked at the top of the eBay search. This was due to its original title, witty description, and high-quality photographs, three features that the previous study of Cassini had revealed as key. The item was sold with an increased market value of 40.5%. In this case study, human-algorithmic curation operated as a method to forge a conceptual and cultural reading of the algorithm, and to re-envision technical practice as a crucial aspect of culture, from which poetic performance can originate. To put it in the words of Taina Bouker, the case study illustrated that knowing algorithm might involve other kinds of register than code. And to conclude, here's my view on human algorithmic curation, a network practice that operates at the threshold between the visible and the invisible. So as we've seen, human algorithmic curation is not devoid of friction and biases. Then it's certainly a practice highly sensitive to context, whose parameters need to be negotiated case by case. Also, its outcomes depend on the kind of value that are encoded and programmed in the algorithmic systems. And finally, its politics lie in opening up small brackets of intervention against current power asymmetries and in envisioning new dynamics of value co-creation among users and technical agents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gaia, for your insights in your strategic alliance. I really like that, that wording. It's interesting. But are there any questions for Gaia? Maybe, yeah, Dominic.
Thank you so much, dear Gaia. I have a question. Thinking about this crawler, like Hell 101, it just finds information on the internet. So if you want to be found as an artist, for example, you need to have access to the internet. And yesterday, Yvonne Sindel called this digital divide. Do you think that those crawlers or experiments enhance this divide or bridge a gap at last?
Well, I think my perspective is that, in a sense, they might amplify it because, you know, there is a sense of relying upon what is already indexed and visible there. So I think, you know, also this morning I think there was a reference to, you know, how this, this crawler might help to identify artists, I don't know, of certain geographic origin. But that very premise, it's problematic in itself, I would say. But I think what I was hinting at, it's precisely that one should approach with a critical eye and view also these crawlers themselves in the kind of operation they perform and the infrastructure they rely upon. So the kind of whole process needs to be evaluated. It's not just because maybe they are able to retrieve information that then they're, the outcome is necessarily a good one. I think it's important to question already, the fact that what's on the internet has already gone through a certain process of selection.
Any other questions?
First of all, thanks a lot for the enlightening talk. I have a confession to make. I think I'm quite an outlier, adhering to a rather, because of my job, to a rather, one might say, conservative outlook towards the curatorial. For me, it always has something to do with organizing objects and thus knowledge inside a space, and giving the possibility for movement in that space and different views on the objects in relation to one another. All things that could be very well seen as being facilitated with the internet, with proximity, with links, with movement. And I really, really like your last slide. The first point that this algorithmic curation is not devoid of friction, which, when you read it, it sounds like a detriment, but I thought of it more as a really good thing, because doing an exhibition in a traditional way, you would try to implement a certain friction into the room and the relation between the objects. So, to get to the question, is that something that you see as a potential benefit of algorithmic curation in relation to maybe a human in a strategic partnership with the AI, to make different kinds of friction productive? Maybe the friction between human and AI, maybe the friction between the objects, maybe the friction of the traditional conception of an physical space in which to exhibit?
I think, yeah, there were a few questions in there. I mean, well, I don't see friction as necessarily like a negative dynamic at all. Actually, I do think, especially when entering in dialogue with a machinic agent, there needs to be some friction that can be actually creatively exploited, and that could open up some interesting modes and ways of looking differently. So, for sure, I guess in that slide, the recap was also, the emphasis was also on biases, in a sense that also the very act of of curating and selecting and being within a specific kind of institutional establishment involves certain biases. So, in a sense, the question was, how do I feel about frictions? And no, I don't have any. I do think it can be, especially in the dynamic with the machinic agent, it could be a very productive way to look at this dynamic. And also to perhaps respond to the first part of your comment, I think it's true that there are different modes of curating out there at the moment. So this kind of conversation sits in a way when placed in the context of a discussion around a museum collection and framed within, the digital humanities, perhaps umbrella. Whereas my practice sits somewhere which is a bit different, which is much more relating with the context of the online space as a place where, different words and different understanding of curating sort of converge. And I think it's important to bear in mind that also when having the more traditional discussion, because the field is kind of in evolution and there is a genealogy of curating online that is becoming more and more present. Thank you.
Okay, we'd have time maybe for one short last question in the back. It's a short one, right? It's a short question for a short answer. It has to be a yes or no question.
This is actually a no yes or no question.
Maybe
just a bit of an idea here. Did you ever thought about? I mean, you spoke about this strategic alliance of human curators and AI curators. Actually, it seems to me that the possibility for an AI to take over curating tasks somehow can also be seen really as a challenge to this ideological figure of the curator. So to say, question towards, do we actually need curators and what for? And sorry that this is a long question now, but do you have an idea for that?
I think I'll try to keep the answer short, but I think the framework is that of a network process. So I agree with the fact that the curator is also potential visibility gatekeeper, and that's problematic in itself. But I think its role is to be inserted within a much wider constellation of agents, where it is a node among many other agents, such as software or platform, of course users as well. So I think my approach is really to look at the curator as one of these nodes and as all of these dynamic as kind of network processes or process of network co-curation.
Okay, Inke.
Maybe
one last one.
Final, just a very short, just a statement. It's not a question. This also goes out to Dominic and to you. I would contest the view that curating is only about selecting. What about writing applications? Can the algorithm do that? That would be a great help. And also, I mean, this whole, organization, you need to organize people, but it's just a statement that came up because really curating is not only about
no, but I agree.
Sitting at the table and selecting.
No, I agree with that, and I think I stressed that involves many other cognitive faculties as well. So thank you for your final comment.
Yeah, I guess that's a task for the next issue of the Training the Archive conference, how to do all the business stuff in the back. Wasn't that your field of studies, Dominic? That's actually what you're going for, I'm pretty sure. Okay, Gaia Tedone, thank you very, very much for the lecture and your answers.